Okay, does that work?
Yes,
Yeah.
there you are.
All right, fantastic. Great. Well, David, welcome. Glad to have you here today to help speak to us about leadership. I was thinking in preface to this meeting today about how I had been a brand spanking new teacher, and a year in, I thought I had lots of suggestions because from the teacher side of things, things weren't going really that well at our school. Even as a newbie, I was sensing that. So I started to make some suggestions. By the end of the second year, they asked me to be headmaster. So that's what you get for complaining, I think. But what it taught me, and at an embarrassingly young age, it taught me the importance of sound leadership in order for the faculty to really be able to carry out the mission that we all join our schools for. So I'm a strong believer in the importance and goodness of a sound leadership within a school. And so happy to have you come talk to us a little bit today about leadership and how it looks and how it works. So thanks to everybody for joining us today.
Yes, and thank you, Michael, for opening us up. I really appreciate that. It's a great joy to be here with everyone today. My name is David Denton, and I'm very excited to give everybody. In an hour you can't accomplish everything, but I think we'll be able to get a good leg up on uh, strategies for leading your school into cultural and academic renewal as you want to move your school deeper into Catholic liberal education. So the big topic today is don't go it alone, how to build a team to accomplish your leadership objectives and your objectives for transitioning into a more authentic Catholic liberal education. Maybe just a few words about myself first. I am a convert. My wife and I came into the church 11 years ago. Our third child was actually the first Catholic, baptized Catholic in the family in probably 300 years, as far back as we can go. Um, I'm a career educator, high school math teacher in private classical schools, as they refer to them in the Protestant world. And then the last 13 years were with a charter school outfit called Great Hearts Academies, where I was a school founder, executive director, and superintendent before I was able to join Arcadia Education a little over a year ago, and now work as a consultant with Arcadia, supporting school leaders in any number of ventures. Our primary efforts are around helping leaders achieve operational excellence. We want you to love your operations as much as you love your mission. So we come alongside and support schools that are launching. We help with strategic business planning. We run board trainings. We do strategic leadership retreats and offer any other number of services, but particularly as it pertains to today, we help schools who are working to embrace the Catholic intellectual tradition of liberal education, or as we might say on the more in the more businessy side of things, transitioning their academic and cultural program to a CLE model, CLE meaning Catholic liberal education. All right, well, let's dive in. So today, in the time that we have together, I have two goals. One is to convince you to build the team you need to help you achieve your vision for renewal. Uh, and the second is to walk through how to build a healthier, more productive team towards that end. So the first thing to do is to start off by figuring out where are you in the uh, in the transition towards embracing Catholic liberal education at your campus. Um, these are non-canonical phases, but anytime you're engaging in a transition, there's basically five phases that you could go in, or that you would need to go through. The first I just refer to as the idea phase. You're just coming into awareness that this is of the idea of Catholic liberal education, and you're wondering what is that thing? I don't even I've not heard of it before. So that may be the place where you are right now, or maybe that's a phase you've already gone through. Next is a discovery phase. This is where you're trying to you're investigating. You're really getting down to figuring it, really working towards answering the question: is this something we're going to do at my school? Once you've made that decision, now you start moving into the planning phase. Okay, we're going to do it. How are we going to do it? Once you've made a plan, then you start implementing it. So that's the implementation phase, and then finally, you move into the refining phase where you've implemented at least some portion of your plan, and now you're reflecting on how did that go, what is next, what course corrections do we make, and so on, need to make, and so on. For the leader, there's basically three mental phases that you go through. First, you're curious about what is this liberal education thing. After some level of looking into it, then you feel compelled that yes, this is the thing we ought to be doing. And finally, you've committed. This is we are now going to do this, and I'm making plans, and we are moving towards it. Right? So everybody on the call is likely in a slightly different place, coming from a slightly different context. But hopefully, you can see roughly where you map onto this, onto this progression. And that's important to know just at the outset. Second, in addition to knowing where you are in the phases, it's good to understand your context, right? If we're going to start stepping forward in this way, you need to know what your context is. What are the assets that you have? What are those things which are going to help assets, meaning those things which are going to help you in moving in this direction? And what are the obstacles? What's going to slow you down or get in the way? Uh, and we all have assets, we all have obstacles at our respective campuses. Some of these are going to be internal, and some of these are going to be external. I think of the internal as those things which are under your authority, so faculty, students, perhaps the campus itself. These would be internal facets of what you're working with, or part of the lay of your land, versus external, those things which are outside of your authority, so parents, the chancery, and so on. Uh, some of your concerns are going to be material, some of them are going to be immaterial. Some are going to deal with perception, some are going to deal with reality. And sometimes perception is good, but reality is less good. Sometimes perception is negative, but reality is actually quite good, right? Everybody's going to be coming from their own context. You really do want to understand what is the reality that you are situated within. And as always, we're dealing with human beings. So uh, for everyone internal and external to your school, they're all going to have their own set of expectations about what your school is and what it's going to do. They're going to have aspirations for whether it's their child or for the school or for you. Uh, they're all coming with some set of knowledge, and they're human beings. They all have some innate level of wonder. So there's always opportunity to engage people with wonder and supply knowledge where there's a lack. Um, but it's also we have to understand that we're working with folks who are going to have irrational attachments to any number of perceptions, expectations, aspirations, and so on. So as we think about transitioning a school, uh, well, and I should pause for a second to note, um, not all of you are going to be aiming at the same level of transition. For some of you, the appropriate next step in your transition is going to be to get one book added to a high school curriculum. Others are going to be in a position where you have more freedom to overhaul entire disciplines and so on. Your context will determine that. Uh, if you're at a parish school, you don't have sole authority over the entirety of what happens. You're going to have to be working within a context of approvals, right? All of that works its way into the context you're coming from. That said, as you are looking to make some level of transition, it's worth it. My simple model is that, and this, this is, I like to keep things simple. Uh, any transition is a movement from state A to state B. Okay. You are in whatever configuration you're in right now, whatever your context is, let's call that state A. As you are planning and envisioning what you want your school to become and what it's possible for your school to become, again, that's going to vary greatly from school to school for everybody on this call. But as you're thinking about what you're moving towards, that's going to be state B. We want both of these to be very well defined. We want to understand them because uh, understanding state A is going to have a big impact on the path that you have to define to get from A to B, right? And so the work that you and the team that I would like you to build are going to have to do is to design not only what is the desired state, what is state B, but the crucial thing is to design the path between states A and B. To simplify this even further, it's worth noting that to remain in state A, to not engage in any change, any transition at all, that's to stay in the same state. That is simple. That's what the S stands for. It is very simple to remain in state A. State A may be unpleasant. State A probably has flaws and problems all of its own, but they're known. And it's simple to stay with what is known. State B, if you can get to it and attain it, would also be a simple place to be. Roles and responsibilities would be known. The vision would be clear. We would have folks rallied and aligned around that clarity to really be making manifest Catholic liberal education for throughout the school. That would be a simple state to be in. But to get from state A to state B, or from one state of simplicity to another state of simplicity, you're going to have to move through a phase of complexity. Right? The more change you're taking on, the greater that complexity is going to be. It's worth uh, pointing out the simplicity of state B because that's easy to overlook. Some folks consider moving into transition and they just get spooked. It feels like it's too much. And it's worth remembering that it won't always be hard and complex if done well. There is a state that is you can get back to a state of simplicity uh, and harmony on the far side of complexity, but we do need to know that we're going to go through a state of complexity, and we've got to be prepared for that. So, what is the strategy for this journey? The strategy starts with assembling the right team. You want to assemble a team to help you lead this transition. It's too big a job to do it by yourself. So you want to get the right team together. We're going to talk more about these as we go, but we're going to assemble the right team, create clarity for that team, meaning everybody needs to know their roles and responsibilities and so on. We're going to cultivate team health, which means for starters, we need to be able to trust each other and engage in conflict productively with each other so that we can commit to decisions, hold each other accountable for getting those things done, and ultimately achieve the desired outcomes that we're aiming at. A healthy team can do that. Then you want to share ownership with your team. This is perhaps the most important point of the whole talk, which is that if you are trying to change your school or one class within your school all by yourself, that change is imperiled and at risk of being very fleeting and only lasting as long as you are there. What we want is for lasting change that takes deep root at our schools. And in order for that to happen, you have to allow ownership to be shared for the transition, for the vision of what is state B that we're aiming at. And then finally, after you assemble your team and you share ownership with them, you're going to lead through your team, not in spite of the team, not around, not it's not just a team that does work for you so that you can go and do all the leading, but rather we're bringing on folks who are going to help us in leading the transition. So why lead transition through a team? Well, there's this may be maybe no, maybe everybody is already at the point of saying, yes, that'd be great. I would love to lead through a team. I don't have one, but I would love to do that. But just in case somebody's on the fence about that, because you may be thinking, look, I've been leading the school by myself for the last 10 years, and it's a lot simpler that way. If I bring on more people, now there's going to be disagreement. Disagreement's not fun. That's going to create division, and I don't want to deal with that. So I'd rather self. I understand that position. I was in that position I held that view for a while as a leader, but you're missing out if that's the route you take. Teams, if you build a team together, if you bring a team together, you're going to be able to leverage a much broader array of gifts, insights, talents, knowledge, and that's going to result in a transition ultimately that's going to be more trusted by the entirety of your community, all the stakeholders, everyone involved. It's going to be more comprehensive. It will have thought of more details, more aspects that needed to be considered, and it's going to be more resilient to the challenges that arise. It's going to outlast you. Leading with a team is essential for lasting, successful renewal in our schools. This slide is visually overwhelming for a reason, right? As you think about transitioning your school, right? Let's stop for a moment and consider the scope and the scale, the magnitude of the work that would go into leading a transition into Catholic liberal education at your school. You have to determine the vision for this change. You have to fully envision state B. That's very difficult to do. Most of us are I should say many of us are content with what we can scratch out on a napkin. That's not a vision, though. That's not a complete and comprehensive vision of what we need, where everyone would have clarity about their roles and responsibilities. We have to determine the process for deciding the sequence of curricular changes to texts, to scope and sequences across all subjects, across all grade levels. We have to think about every stakeholder and the process for framing our communications with those stakeholders. There's the pedagogical changes, the trainings we would need, the observation and feedback cycles for teachers to make sure that the change that we're proposing is actually taking root, determining the pace of the transition, the process and strategies for responding to concerns and opposition. There's a lot. There's a lot to do, and it's not we. It's just going to be. I don't want to say, I don't want to tell you what you can and can't do, but the reality is it's just going to be too big for you to do the job as well as it needs to be done. If you bring a team to bear, you're going to have more fun and you're not going to burn out as much, maybe at all. You're going to make better decisions. You're going to have better plans. You're going to have better implementation, better execution. You're going to have exponentially greater responsiveness to the concerns or just even the questions that come up from faculty and parents, because it's not just you. You've now authorized and equipped a team to go and be your voice throughout the community. You're going to build greater buy-in and engagement because it's not just you. It's not just one person who's trying to get everybody to move in a certain direction. Uh, you've first brought in an inner circle and got secured buy-in and engagement with them, and now you have a team of people who are disseminating that. That's also just the process of leading through a team is going to naturally strengthen your relationships with those team members. And in turn, it's going to help those team members strengthen their relationships with the other people that they're engaging with on this project. You're going to increase their leadership capacity, which is tremendous for strengthening the health of your school overall. You're going to, again, get better outcomes, better results. Not to mention that your admin and faculty culture overall will be strengthened. Again, if we do this well, if we do this right, we're going to strengthen culture overall. And our faculty is going to feel more ownership and engagement. They're going to feel more fulfilled, even that they are indeed living out their calling and making a difference. Uh, if because we've given them a vision and given them ownership in that vision, and resource them to go and fulfill that vision. So, how do we get started? Step zero. The first thing to do is again is assemble the team. And the first thing I want to say here is that you already have a team. Even if you are in a small school of 10 teachers and you are the sole administrator, you actually already have a team. Because consider this, I'm confident that you already have two people on that faculty that are your trusted counselors, the folks that you go to and bounce ideas off of, the folks that you go and ask and check in with to see what's the temperature of the room, right? You already have a couple of trusted teammates. You may not have an official team, but you have those teammates identified, and you're probably already operating as an unofficial team with them. The idea here would be to bring those people together and formalize that we are a team and we're going to be engaging in this in a particular undertaking, right? We might be starting at the idea phase where, hey, there's this neat thing called classical liberal education, and we're going to go investigate it a little bit. That might be where the team is starting. Um, or it may be that you've already made a decision and you're bringing them in at the planning process. You may already have started implementing by yourself, and now you're assembling a team after the fact to help with whatever steps remain and the refinements that are still needed. Wherever you are, it's a great time to assemble the team. Now, the second thing to say is that if you have a team, you may not have the right team. So, for instance, if you have a leadership team at your school, but that leadership team consists primarily of whoever's over operations, a business manager, um, whoever's, if it's primarily an administrative team, that's really not the right team, is it, to lead cultural or instructional change, to bring about a refined vision for renewal for your school. So that doesn't mean you have to dismiss that team. That team continues to do what that team does, but it's a different team that you need to assemble to consider and to plan for how you're going to implement classical liberal education. And so assemble the team you need. How do you know who is the team you need? What are the markers for these people? Well, as we've already indicated, who are the who are the folks that you already seek out for counsel, the people that you trust? Who are already the cultural and instructional exemplars on your campus? Who are the folks that are sufficiently knowledgeable, intellectually curious, and competent to be uh, to be people on the team so that whose voices are those that you need on the team, right? The folks who are going to the other people on your campus look to. Right? Those are the people that you're looking for. It can be it could be an assistant teacher. I've seen that in some cases. You can have faculty. Of course, if you have a dean or an assistant headmaster, an assistant principal, those would be usually obvious choices, but not necessarily. What you want is the right team for your school and your context. Okay. Once you've got a team, now we can really get to step one, which is to build a cohesive team, to build cohesion within the team. This is the picture we're looking at is the Patrick Lencioni model. It's from his book, The Advantage. Um, Patrick Lencioni is a Catholic uh, organizational expert and executive leader guru. He's one of the top in the world. Um, and he goes to mass every day. Uh, His paradigm is that there are four disciplines for organizational health. These are essentially done in order and then repeated. Right? So we build a cohesive leadership team. We create clarity for that team. We over communicate clarity within that team and throughout the organization, and then we build systems and structures that reinforce that clarity. And then we go back to we return to step one and make sure that we're still doing that. And we keep going through the cycle. All right. So step one is to build a cohesive team. How do we do that? There's 5 things that we need to do to build team health. So uh, just so that we don't lose track of where we are, you've decided that you're going to pursue some level of transition to Catholic liberal education. It might be very small. It might be much larger. Um, you've you've identified the folks that you want on the team. You've brought them together. Before you can just start charging ahead and getting things done, you do need to help that team understand how it operates as a team. And so there are 5 things that have to be done right at the outset and done throughout your entire time working together. The first is that you need to build trust. And trust, there are many, I guess there are many counterfeit versions of trust. They're simply not disagreeing with each other, but that's not really trust. There is a higher level, which is I know you well enough to be able to predict what you're going to do, and so I can trust how you're going to behave. But what we really mean is I can predict, and that's a knowledge of a sort, but it's not the level of depth. It's not the deep calling to deep that we're looking for. What we really want is vulnerability-based trust, where we have a team that has as an operating norm the willingness to put up their hand and say, I actually don't know the answer on this. I don't know how to go about doing this. I'm struggling on this part. Can anybody help me? I get stressed out or flustered in these situations, so I'm going to need help and coaching to be able to handle this thing you're asking me to do. Right? We all want to be on a team full of people who are like that. We all know the desire to be that way ourselves on whatever teams we're a part of. This is your team. Build the team the way you want it to be. We want it to be healthy. It's going to get the best results that way. You, as the leader, would set the tone, set the pace, set the example of being vulnerable, saying, I'm bringing y'all together because I can't do this alone. That's step one towards vulnerability. And you want to set that tone and you want to stick with it and talk about it openly and explicitly so that everybody knows this is what the expectation is, and this is what's been uh, set as the norm by the leader of the team. So I feel okay and comfortable doing it myself. The second thing your team needs to do is to be able to engage in conflict. Meaning, if you're really trying to do something well, everybody needs to bring all their thoughts to bear. You're not going to have all the same thoughts. There's going to be thoughts that are in conflict with each other. And we're going to need to figure out how to be comfortable naming that and working our way through it. So that is a second behavior that we need to normalize on our team, that conflict is actually a good thing. Disagreement is good. Animus towards each other, that's not helpful. All right. Ad hominem attacks, that's not what we're talking about. What we're doing is putting ideas on the table and then making sure that the best idea wins, but keeping our egos off the table, right? Again, the leader is going to have to set the pace and set the example in doing this, making sure that they're willing to go first. In this case, that means inviting disagreement. You might even have to model your own disagreement with your own idea, right? In sort of a Thomas Aquinas kind of way, right? Um, but this is a crucial skill for a team to have to be an effective team. You've got to be able to say what you really think and work your way through it, trusting that you're still going to be friends and you still actually love and care about each other, even as you're disagreeing with each other's ideas. If everybody has voiced their opinion, then they can all commit to what the decision is. So the process is going to be, we have to make a decision. We have disagreement about what that decision should be, what the answer should be. In the end, the leader's going to make that decision after the robust conversations happened. We don't have to wait till everyone agrees. At some point, the leader would make the final decision. But if everybody is weighed and if everybody is weighed in, then even if you disagreed, you can still commit to what that decision is with your full heart. Intel was very famous for having a rule for this. They said disagree and commit. We're going to get together. We're going to say what we think. We're going to disagree at times, and that's okay. Everybody has to say what they think, we'll make the best decision we can, and then we all have to commit to that decision, whatever it is. If everybody commits, then it's not just the principal who would or the headmaster or the leader who would hold the team accountable for meeting their commitments. But if the team is committed, now the team members really are in a good position to be able to hold each other accountable. And that's the strongest form of accountability. Right? I mean, I go back to my high school teams. That's, the best high school teams I was on, it was the players holding each other accountable and making good decisions off the court so they could be their best on the court. And finally, we do all of this so that if we're holding each other accountable, that allows us to focus on results. I know results sounds that's really businessy. It doesn't in the education world. We don't think about that. Well, we do think about results, but I think for many of us, the real reason we're here is for the forming of the hearts and minds and souls of kids, and it just doesn't feel like a result. That's the wrong word. But please understand this is that uh, if we're wanting to form hearts and souls and minds well, that is the result that we're aiming at. So we're all of this is going to be with an eye towards transmitting culture and faith and forming hearts and minds, right? Uh, and just doing it in the best way possible. Okay, that was creating clarity or sorry, that was building a cohesive leadership team. That's a team that's healthy. The next thing we have to do with our healthy, cohesive, coherent team is to create clarity for them. Okay, this is step two. And particularly if it's an ad hoc team, there's going to be a whole lot of clarity that's needed right off the bat because it's a brand new team and it's been assembled for a specific task. So the vision and goals for the project are going to need to be made very clear to everyone on the team. Each one of their individual roles and responsibilities will need to be delineated, mapped out, and limitations set, meaning that these are your responsibilities and these other things are not your responsibilities. This is your role and this is not your role. And everyone needs to know that not only for themselves, but for every other person on the team. You have to build practices and protocols. This is all the way down to how are we getting work done with each other? Are we texting each other when we have ideas? Or does everything need to be done by email? Do we have a Google Doc that's the repository for all our thoughts? Right? What are the actual software platforms we're using to track our work? Right? How are we sharing our work with each other? What is the meeting cadence? Right? Are we meeting every week? Are we meeting every month? Or something in between? What's the agenda for the meeting? How does every member of the team add to the agenda for the meeting? Right? There's a whole host of things. What are the communication protocols? Am I allowed to talk about what we're doing with my colleagues on the faculty who are not on the transition team? Right? There's a whole host of practices and protocols that need to be laid out for folks to have clarity about how they're supposed to fulfill their duties to the team well. What's our process for making a decision? Right? We talked about this a second ago. Are we trying to reach consensus? Does everybody have to agree before we've made a decision? Or does everybody have to have voiced their opinion, their thought, and defended it, and then the leader of the team actually makes that decision, right? Are there some decisions which team members can make for themselves because they've been delegated a particular vertical to be over or not? I'm not laying out that in your context, there may be different ways to structure this, but however you structure it, make sure it's defined and that everybody understands what it is. If it turns out that you built it poorly and it's the structure for decision making, for instance, is not working out very well, well, then revisit. But again, establish clarity and make sure everybody knows what the rule is, and then everybody's free to go forward. What is your strategic approach? There's no oh so sorry there's no shortage of strategic approaches um, that can be taken. So, for instance, are we going to take an incrementalist approach to our change, or are we going to rip off the band-aid? Right? That's usually the biggest question in a transition. Are we investing in the yeses, or are we trying to build consensus throughout our entire faculty? Um, are we burning the ships, or are we boiling the frogs? Right? um, but that's those are different strategic approaches. You just want to be clear, and that should actually be a decision you make, right? And then finally, uh, plan the work and then work the plan, right? All of these are parts of creating clarity for your team. Now, there's probably some questions that have been bubbling in the back of your mind that I think would be good to address now. Uh, it's likely the case for some people on the call that you have a tremendous passion and depth of vision for what you want to instantiate at your campus. You have a beautiful vision of what State B is that you want to get to. And yet, the reality from your context, whether it's whether it's the parish level or it's your board, it's the chancery, or it's the low capabilities of a leader, of the leadership team that you happen to have at the moment, whatever it is, there may be something that's really gating your ability to move forward in a way that you want. Or it may even be that something deeper has been triggered or would be triggered as a result of moving towards classical liberal education or Catholic. I did it. Sorry, Mike. Yeah, Mel Protestant habits got the better of me. Catholic liberal education. Um, so there are, and the questions that I want to highlight are, if this move triggers a change to your stated mission, right, for the stated and understood vision of your school, that's you need to slow down and understand we might need to broaden the conversation and bring in more people to make sure that everyone who's a stakeholder in understanding the definition of this school is on the same page before we move forward. Okay, that's a reality, and that's if that means that change is going to take 10 years, then that's what it means, right? That's we can't circumvent reality for the sake of what we want in transition. Okay. Um, now, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay. Uh, but if you're so for instance, if you're in a school that's 70 years old, it has a mission statement, it's a stated reason of why that school exists and it's been around for a generation. And what you're envisioning is a change to that. Understand that you can't just charge ahead making changes internal to the campus without first going through a process where you've invited the right stakeholders together to secure alignment and agreement around a refinement to the answer to the question of why do we exist as a school? What is our purpose, our vision, or in some cases, our mission statement? Whatever the language is that you're using, you've got to make sure that you're aligned there with the folks above before you charge ahead with the folks at your campus. All right. Um, and these are Patrick Lencioni's 6 questions for creating clarity on your team, really creating clarity for your organization. Right. The organization needs to know why it exists, what are our core behaviors, what do we do? Do we run? Are we a K-8? Or are we a K-12? Are we a 9-12? What's the thing we do? That's the easiest question to answer. How are we going to succeed? What are that's said another way. That's what are our strategic anchors? What are our market differentiators? What's the thing we do that everybody in the community knows we're really good at, and that's the thing they love about us? What is that? What's the answer to that for your school? Um, and then what's most important right now, that gets down to your thematic goals and who needs to do what in support of number 5, in support of what's most important right now. Those last 2 questions are really more temporal in nature. They're more about what's happening right now on the ground, say in the next 3 months to 6 months. The first 4 questions, these are questions that shouldn't be changing. Maybe more than once in at the highest level, why do we exist? That that shouldn't change more than once a generation, if that, right? Sometimes the area you're in may have had an economic downturn, or it may have gentrified, and that may radically change the mission and the purpose of your school as it stays in that one geographic location. That happens. But in general, why you exist doesn't change. Um, as you work your way down, these things might change with a little bit more frequency. But if questions 1 through 4 are going to change as a result of moving towards Catholic liberal education, then you need to slow down and make sure that you're not getting out over your skis, and that the folks who are stakeholders in your context, your parish pastor, for example, that they're on board and that you have alignment with them. Okay, and that's its own process to go through. All right. Um, so thank you. That gets us to the end. I think we were able to save some time for some Q&A. But before we open it up for Q&A, I just want to reiterate: don't go it alone. Build a team. Lead through your team. You're going to increase the capacity of the people. You're going to strengthen your culture, and you're going to be able to you're going to be able to bring about transformation that takes deeper roots and outlives you. Uh, in order to do that, build the team you need. Don't go, it's not necessarily going with the team you have, build the team you need. You don't even have to, you don't have to compensate people for this work. Folks love doing what they do. And don't be afraid to invite folks, don't rob them of the blessing of taking a part in shaping the school that they work for. They love your school too, and they'll be honored to be a part of this. Um, Create clarity with them and create clarity for them, because when there's clarity, we love what we're doing. And then lead them in leading the renewal. Lead them in leading the renewal. All right. If you have questions, go ahead and submit them. If you would type them in, Morgan, forgive me, Morgan. I'm sorry I didn't introduce you at the top
That's
of the
okay.
hour. Morgan's my friend and colleague. She's our vice president of operations at Arcadia. If you'll type in your questions, she'll send them on to me, or she'll voice them out loud for all of us, and we can dive in that way. And then while the questions are coming, I know you need a second to type. If you have any questions, if you want to talk further, please feel free, call, text, email me with any questions you have. That's my cell and that's my email address. Feel free to take those down. Would love to hear from you, and learn about your situation, what you're up against, and um, just be a sounding board as you're thinking about how to move forward. I know that you certainly have advocates and counselors at ICLE as well. Just would be honored and love to be a part of the conversation with you. Morgan, any questions so far?
Yeah, we have a couple that have come in. So the first one is, what are your thoughts on including someone on the team who you know is not wholly mission-minded, so that they can either join into the mission fully or leave the school altogether?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Looking at sort of inviting them in as a way to uh, win them over. I think that I understand the impulse. I think that when you're looking at the team that's going to lead uh, the transition, you do want folks who are uh, aligned around the purpose of the team. If the purpose of the team is to explore whether you're going to move forward or not, then I think it makes sense to cast a broader net, and you're going to get more a broader array of opinions that way, and you're going to get a better sense of the lay of the land. Um, but that said, I think what you're really looking for on your team, ultimately I would recommend against doing that. What you really want on your team are the folks who are, in one way, shape, or form, a yes in their disposition. They may still be learning, They may have some reservations or concerns, but fundamentally they're coming from a position of curiosity or wonder, and openness to making this work and moving forward in good faith. So you're looking for the folks who are humble, hungry, and they have intelligence around how to work with folks. Yeah.
Another
Great question.
question is, we are overworked at our schools.
Mhm.
How do we approach teachers and invite them to additional duties and responsibilities?
Yeah, no, great question. And in some cases, you're simply going to have the best person is offline and not available, right? I mean, that is going to be a reality in some cases. Or but I think you will be surprised if you are able to provide clarity for people about what the boundaries of the work are, uh, how the work is going to happen. Um, if you're able to give really clear definition to this is when we meet, this is how we meet, here's the resources that you need, here's the Google Drive and so on and so on. What you've done is streamlined the amount of time it's going to take them to do it. Uh, and that's going to be really appreciated. And I think that, as my grandfather used to say, if you want to get a job done, ask the busiest guy to do it, because that's the guy who gets things done. um, and so don't be bashful. That's the first thing. They can say no, right? And some people don't know how to say no, and you're going to have to help them limit and protect themselves, right? I trust you guys to be wise on that front. Um, but you're going to have to invite people in on this. You're going to have to invite people in. You don't want, and it may be that you have to get more of the work done over the summer than during the school year, right? You're going to have to be smart about how you time it and how you make it, how you structure it. But if you don't have faculty that are a part of this transition team, you're going to have a blind spot, right? It doesn't need to be a lot of folks. You don't have to have a big team to do this. Okay, 5 people is a plenty good sized team. Then I'm sure there's gonna be follow-up questions on that. But yeah, let's move on to the next one, Morgan.
Yeah. Can you go back to the slides about the 5 steps, build trust?
Yes.
Yeah, someone just would like to look at that slide again.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'll leave it right here.
Great. Okay, next question. We have an attendee who is launching a new CLE school. Much of what you said aligns for startups, but I'm wondering if you have any insights as to how to engage the broader community from a marketing or sales perspective. How do you get folks to buy into something that is new?
Right. That's a great idea. Hopefully I have no new ideas for you. It's just going to be it's you're going to have your early adopters, you're going to have your looky-loos and your folks who are just kind of curious, but they're just hard to sell, and you're going to have folks who just out and out reject it, and they're still going to come to your school, and then they're going to tell you you need to change everything, and that's we've all seen all those types. But I think that the main thing when it comes to marketing, particularly for a school that's launching, um, this is a human endeavor, and I think that the best marketing we do is going to be human to human. So finding your early adopters, your families that are going to be willing to host events in their home, where you can get a small group of parents together, and the leader, whether it's the leader of the board or the head of school, both ideally, are able to get in front of people. And what you want to do is let your heart and your passion for the mission shine as you are instructing people and handing over knowledge to them, so that they are able to see the thing you see with more clarity. Okay. I really do believe that if people just understood what it is that is meant by Catholic liberal education, that they would be much more desirous of it. Um, it's also the case that and I think it's increasingly possible to find folks who are exemplars, kids, recent graduates who've been through a similar education, parents of a kid who's gone through a similar education, or even folks from ICLE who see this, who are able to speak to this broadly. I think that the strongest thing we can do is to take the stance of educating people about what it is that we're trying to do, um, and and how it is that we're going to do it, and why this forms the soul. Because for a lot of folks are really tight-chested about my kid's got to get a job and succeed in the world because the world's a tough and brutal place. Um, but if there's allow the pastoral side to come through as well. We are always going to be counseling parents to take courage, have hope. Don't forget that what's most important is your son or daughter's faith and their intellectual and moral formation. That's lay that foundation in the same way that the slide we're looking at says, if you want to have a good team, you got to start with building trust. Trust and results feel really far apart from each other, and it can feel like a waste of time to invest in this vulnerability based trust and relationship building stuff. That can feel like a waste of time, but it's not. It's in fact it's the only way over the long haul to continue to grow and excel. It's essentially the same way in forming a kid who's going to thrive in the world. It's we start with the things that are in some ways the easiest to overlook, and that's so we just let I say it in one way. So I kind of say it a different way every time, but it's let people know your heart and your vision, and do that over and over and over again, and get better and better and better at doing it. Hone the way in which you say it, so that you've got your 30-second elevator pitch and your 5-minute talk for somebody who asks the fuller question. We could talk a long time about this, but it's just going to take a lot of time and patience on your part. Start early and meet often with parents in getting them to talk and equipping them to go and be force multipliers. Ultimately you're going to want to identify those parents who are going to be your champions and advocates, and get them going out into the community to bring more folks to you. Yeah, great. More tons to say on that, but I've probably gone too long already. Go ahead, Morgan. What's next?
Can you quickly go to the slide of the 4 disciplines of a healthy organization?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
All of this can be found in Patrick Lencioni's book, The Advantage. All of this can be found in Patrick Lencioni's book, The Advantage.
okay, there's 2 more questions. I don't know if we're going to get to all of our questions, but there's 2 more that I think sound really great. So the first one is, what is your experience in winning over pastors through your consulting role? Any sample ways to approach a pastor in terms of supporting their school? But do you not, or do you know anything about liberal education at a grade school level?
Um, yeah, sounds like maybe a couple of different questions in there. Um, it's I will say that not every pastor's been won over. And it's good to, thinking about A to B. If your pastor's not at yes, you need to understand what's the no. And you're going to need to be patient. Um, for some pastors, the no is really, it's not so much intellectual as it is about just effort. They feel overburdened and overtaxed, and the thought of taking on and shouldering the load of some level of transition that they would have to defend and argue with other people, or that they're going to get questioned. It's going to generate phone calls for them. They just don't want to take that on. And for others, a there may be an intellectual aversion to it of a sort. There may be I don't know. There's any number of objections, and I think the most effective thing that I could say is if you go in with your mind made up about what the outcome needs to be, you've shot yourself in the foot. You need to go in with an open mind, open heart, and a willingness to not get your way. Uh, but I do think you want to engage the pastor at the right time in the right way, and invite them into conversation about it. And sometimes folks are there to yes, they just need to be asked. Some pastors are there. Um, some are going to be skeptical, but if they see a really clear vision that you've been able to articulate for them, that's going to give them the confidence they need. Some are just going to have a lot of questions, and some are going to be they're just going to be a hard no, and that's going to be really difficult to deal with. And you're just going to need to be willing to dig in for the long haul. But I think the primary thing is going to be you want to have clarity around what is state B that you're trying to get to. But even more important in this case is going to be having clarity around state A, which is where is the pastor's head and heart, and how can you partner with them, and what's going to be your approach to winning their heart and mind. It may also be the case that they're at a yes, but they feel like the chancery's at a no, and that's okay. I don't want to set up I don't want to set up enmity between us and those entities which have allowed our schools to exist in the first place. I think the right posture is gratitude for that. Um, and it's if you set it up as I only win if I get my way and I lose if I don't get my way, you're setting yourself up for failure. Let's not take that approach. But let's pray, and let's also be persistent. The widow who persisted, eventually got justice. um, but it was not through threats or arguments. It was just persistence in engaging in the conversation. Lots more to say there, but it's I think that you we're not going to win in every single instance. That is really the tough reality. But I think we should engage in every instance, right? And just be smart about how we do it. Is there another question?
Yeah, I think we have time for one more. And then David, do you
Good.
want to pull up the slide with your email?
Yeah.
Because I just want to throw out there, if anyone has any questions, please send an email. Okay, we have an amazing leadership team that works very well together. Can you give some suggestions on how to create cohesion with a board of directors that is ineffective, slow moving on everything, and sometimes in conflict with members of the school's leadership team?
That's going to be really tough. Great question. And you're not alone. We work with a lot of schools, and that's a pretty common affliction. Let's give a little grace. Being on a board is extremely difficult. It's rare, or it's less often the case that you have a very healthy, high functioning board than you don't, because there's just so many ways for it to go sideways on you. There's It's difficult to lead from below. Sometimes the board really sees itself as firmly in charge and trying to tell the principal what to do. Sometimes boards feel they're ineffective, but they come from a position of we don't know what to do. Where they're looking to the principal all the time for direction. If they're looking to you for direction, then you can direct them to Lencioni and his work, The Advantage. That's a great place to start. And boards are actually required to go through training on an annual basis, and that's certainly something that Arcadia does, and lots of other firms do. Helping them, not telling them they need to go find someone to train them, but actually bringing a trainer that is going to be do a good job to them, tease them up nicely to just have to say yes, and then they can get training that will start moving them in a direction of alignment. Um, uh, Everybody's contact. There's a lot of different scenarios in which that plays out, but ultimately you're going to want to figure out you're going to want to plant the seed that there is a better way, in a you coming from a disposition of gratitude and appreciation for what they're doing, and mercy and grace, given that it's a hard job to do, still being willing to speak the truth in love that, hey, it's not going as well as it could. I'd like to explore how to do that with you and engage in kind of coming along in a partnership sort of way instead of a finger pointing way. And either they all read a book together, or usually, I mean, the fastest way and simplest way to get this done is to as a third party comes in and works with them. It's always easier to hear from somebody you're not going to have to live with for the next couple of years. That that usually makes it easier to digest. So there's just some initial thoughts on that. It's a great question. And Morgan, I know we're a couple minutes over. I'm happy to stay on for another 5 minutes or so. I mean, I know there's a lot of questions. If everybody, if you're here and you got to jump to the next one, thank you so much for coming. Such a joy to get to talk to you. And we'll see you out there. No, but if anybody wants to stick around, how about we can knock down one or two more questions, I bet.
Yeah, sure. I have no problem with that. Okay, the next one. I'm the new principal at a classical school that is in its third year. While I'm known in the community and with the faculty, do you have any tips on how to manage the transition in leadership while working to maintain and strengthen the mission and clarity?
Yeah, that's great. So strengthening, I assume that means uh, how to navigate your own transition into the role. And yeah, I think that's a great question. A little bit different from what we're tangential, but related to what we're talking about. The 30, 60, 90 approach, where you want to, at the very least, the first 30 days, you're just gathering information. You're on the listening tour. You've probably, at this point in the year, I'm sure you've already done that. But it's you want to listen, and then you want to everybody's opinions. You want to map out what the issues are, and then with the last 30 days, you want to you want to be mapping out what your plans are for how to address the issues that have arisen. That's just kind of a basic structure. Um, but I think what you want to do is really focus on that pyramid and building a healthy team. If you rather than trying to be popular to everybody, you do need to be visible, right? As a leader, you want to be out at the curbside and everything. But your most important task is going to be to establish trust and health on your leadership team. And probably the first thing to do there is to decide, do I actually have the right people on the team? Do we have all the right people on the bus, and are they in the right seats on the bus, qua leadership team? Figure out your leadership team first. Once that team is aligned and gelling, then you're going to be able to move forward with a lot more confidence on making the other changes. What's next, Morgan? Great question. Thank you.
If decisions were made to further Catholic liberal education at an older school without getting all stakeholders' approval, how can one go about recovering trust?
Yeah, I mean, it's such, well, let me just honor that question. I think there's a lot of humility being put forward in that, just imposing it. Um, and the, it's what we learn in kindergarten, right? It's what we teach our kids. If we got out over our skis, if we got out ahead of somebody, or went ahead without seeking approval or input at least, then we need to just go and name that and make amends. And that they may not, an apology it requires two hands, right? So you can extend the apology. It may not be reciprocated. The handshake may not be completed, but that's okay. You've done what can be done in that instance. With regard to do you need to roll things back? I think that starts to get into case by case determinations. Um, but in terms of just reestablishing trust, it's going to start with, hey, let me share out my side. This is where I think I did wrong, and it's and just does the other person receive that? Until you've done that, you're not going to be able to advance the ball on anything else. Yeah. But I mean, that is a rich area of conversation and a really crucial one. And I love it because it's going right to that most fundamental thing of establishing trust with people. Um, yeah, thank you. What's maybe one more, Morgan?
Sure. The teachers at my school have a wide range of experience. What tactful approach do you recommend uh, with training? So they're asking, starting with younger, more flexible teachers or starting with older, more experienced teachers?
Oh, that's great. I'm assuming it's, with respect to how to move them forward in liberal education, period. That's I think there's no one right answer on that. I think that's, again, I would go back to, well, understand your context, and some of you are going to be in a context where you have generalized disinterest and localized passion. Some of you are going to have larger pockets of opposition. You're just, it's, I mean, there's all areas you're looking at. You're going to be in the best position to plot what's the best path forward that's so that we can get. I think the idea is to think about, where do you want to be in 5 years, not what's going to make things most comfortable tomorrow. So if you're in a position where you have a couple of old guard sourpusses that need to either get on board or select themselves out, then that's maybe maybe the scenario you really need to be in is invest in the yes. That may be your strategy. Pick identify the folks who are they are just ready to go right now, and think about it as frame it as sort of a beta testing year or a pilot year for different things, and really start investing in the yeses and build out from there. And folks will either opt into that or they'll select out. Um, but if you have one person who's a yes and 20 people who are a no, invest in the yes may not, that's not really not where you are. You don't have quite enough critical mass. So you might really need to be, if you have like almost universal opposition to what you're doing, that's a really different, that's a much more difficult position to be in. And I think it's going to you're going to have to you have to be prepared to go much more slowly and to involve people in the exploration phase for a longer period of time. Yes, great stuff. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I can see the questions have kept coming in. Morgan, maybe there's a way to capture those, and if it's possible, we could look for a way to follow up with people. If we didn't get to your question, please do feel free to just email it to me directly, and I'll follow up with you. I think that's it. Let's do it that way. If you didn't get your question answered, just email it to me, and um, we'll follow up, and I'll really look forward to that. Uh, Michael, thank you so much for hosting us. I really appreciate it. It's just such an honor to get to be here and to speaking to folks who are doing something that's I think so crucial for our country and for our kingdom. And so God bless you guys, and wish you all the best as you're out there working to form the hearts and minds of our kids. All righty. Take care, everyone.